Welcome, everybody. Jeff is out today. He's up in Denver handling some things, so he's not going to be here today. But I'm excited for our guest speaker today, and she's got a bio sheet, so I'm not even going to go over her bio. I'm going to let her do that. But Michelle Martin, she is with us from the Florida area, actually the Orlando area. She's worked a lot in the Fort Walton area where she was within. It lived there for many, many years, and that's really her market that she still works a lot. But anyway, I am excited to have her share today. She's going to be talking about kind of working with a modern buyer. We had a similar, very similar, one of her partners, Caleb, did a training for us about 3.5 months ago that is very similar to what Michelle is going to be talking about today. But we've got new people, things have changed. There's some AI components with it as well. And so if you've seen it before, listen, in this world of AI and as fast as it's changing, we need to stay on top of all of this. So she's going to be talking today about the modern buyer, working with them. And Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Super excited just to have you and just listen to what you got to teach us today. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity. I am so happy to be here with you guys. And it's funny because Caleb and I, and actually a third gentleman did the presentation or did, this topic at EXPCon last year at a breakout. And it was funny when we were putting it together, we had so many different ideas about the same thing because we all just work our clients and work with our buyers entirely differently. So I always tell people when I'm training or like I teach fast cap. So I always say, you're taking fast cap with me. That's cool. Take it with somebody else though, because they're going to have a completely different like perspective on things. They have way different information than I do. Like we're two different people in two different markets. So it's always really nice to hear information from different people. So that's what I hope to bring to you guys today. So, all right, guys. Hi, I'm Michelle Martin. And yes, I'm going to be talking about the modern first-time home buyer. And my goal for today is just to give you as much perspective as I can on working with buyers in general. So because it's actually my favorite like client to work with. I love working with buyers. I work with sellers and, sellers have their perks, but I just love working with buyers. And I always say, buyers 99% of the time, like you get to the closing table and they're just so happy and it's just like a wonderful experience. And they're just, it's just like a happy time in their lives. And I love to be a part of that. Whereas like sellers sometimes, it's like hit or miss. Like sometimes they're super thrilled with you. And then, sometimes lately they're, like took forever to sell the house, like that kind of thing, right? Because the market's shifting. But buyers are just usually so thrilled. And I love working with them. So as Kathy mentioned, I do have a little bit of bio on here. So I have been licensed since 2015, so 11 and a half-ish years now. I've sold almost 1,000 homes in my career. I worked solo, but I've also had teams in the past. I've had two different teams. Let's see. So that's around 250 million. I forgot the M there. Okay, million career volume sold. My last mega team that I had with a partner, I ended up selling it in 2024. So I'm just, solo chilling with my admins and just entering into a different phase of my career. So I also am the instructor of the year for EXP University 2025, which I'm thrilled about. And like I mentioned, I do teach fast cap and I do run my business 100% remote. So Kathy mentioned that a second ago, like I do live in Orlando, but the majority of my business is still in the Florida Panhandle, which is where we used to live. My husband was in the Air Force. So we lived there for a little while. That's where I got my career started. And when we moved, I said, I don't want to really start over and learn a new market and, have a new sphere. And my sphere is working just fine. So I'm going to keep working that sphere. And I'm not trying to start over. So if you guys ever have questions about that kind of vibe, just let me know. I'm happy to share. So here is our game plan for today. So we're going to talk about why first-time homebuyers feel overwhelmed in this day and age, right? Which is a little bit different than it used to be. Even when I started, like I know it's not that long ago, but in terms of the way technology has evolved, it is like, it feels like an eternity ago. Like I always say back in my day, but it's not that long ago, but it also is, right? We're also going to talk about shifting your role from an expert to being a trusted guide, right? Because there's the way that the buyer comes to us now is completely different. We're going to talk about some strategies to set clear expectations early, and then talk about some tools and things that you guys can use. So who in the heck are these buyers anyway that we're talking about, right? So we are, the majority of our buyers nowadays are millennials, or Gen Z is starting to enter the market, right? And this is where it's starting to change. The Gen Zers are changing everything. So in case you guys didn't know, I kind of had to look to see where these numbers fell. So I put the years there for you. So millennials are from 81 to 96. So I fall in there, and I think a lot of us do as well. And then we have our little Gen Zers coming in from 97 to 2012. So these are the kids that, like, the age that started to grow up basically with a screen in front of their face, and everybody after, it's only, like, what I'm talking about today, it's only going to get worse, right? Like, my son was born in 2012, my little son was born in 2014, and the way that, like, they're growing up is wild to me. Like, I saw my oldest son's yearbook, and it was an iPad. It looked like an iPad, and inside it had little emojis and stuff. Like, they are like, and they're sixth graders talking about, my favorite app is Snapchat. So these are little kids. Imagine when they become adults and start buying property. Like, what is their perception on the human relationship going to be like, right? And like, how comfortable are they going to be, like, using the internet for their home searches versus, like, you say, like, a millennial that grew up like, well, don't trust what the internet says, like, human to human relationship. Like, that's two, like, we're talking about two completely different ways of thinking about business. Yeah. So in preparation for this, I updated my stats for you guys. So the median age for a first-time home buyer is now 40 years old. 40, which is the highest it's ever been, by the way. Okay, so these folks, like, as time goes by, these people who are starting to buy homes are going to become more like digital, like, decision makers, right? Like, they're way more comfortable with the internet and doing things digitally. Like, how I work remotely, like, my clients don't see me ever, and they're comfortable with that. Sometimes they don't see me or their houses ever. They buy their houses via video. Like, talk about the comfort level. If you would have talked to someone 20, 30 years ago about doing that, they would have thought you were insane. You know what I mean? But now it's like, like, I work with a lot of military buyers, and that's totally normal. Yeah. So some of these people are also coming to the table with a lot of student loan debt. Okay, which could make their qualification a little bit more difficult, could mean they are more payment sensitive, right? It's just, we're in a different, that situation is not getting any better. Yeah. And and you know what? Caveat, not just student loan debt in general, debt, period. Okay. A lot of people are coming to the table with a lot of short-term debt as well, which is affecting their qualification ability, affecting, like, it's just affecting everything. Okay. These buyers also value transparency and speed. Why? Because they're used to getting transparency and speed via the internet. So they want to see a house, they go on the internet, and they get to see pictures, and they scroll really fast. If they wanted to see the inside, they click a few buttons and someone will meet them there to see it. So they're all about speed right now, right? So they want clarity, confidence. They want it to be simple. So by the time they talk to us, it's probably because they're overwhelmed and they want, like, can you dumb it down for me? Can you talk to me like I'm 5, like that kind of vibe? And they want the education without the pressure. There is no pressure on the internet when they're getting their education. So they don't want to talk to a human and then receive the pressure. Kind of like when you just want to see a car in person and you walk to the used car lot and you see them coming out. They're going to get you. They don't want that. They don't want that from an agent. That's why they're on the internet for such a long time before they talk to a human. But eventually, I'm here to tell you, they will talk to a human eventually. Okay. So my friends, like I'm kind of alluding to, the shift has already happened. So today's first-time home buyer is completely different than 10 years ago first-time home buyer, and 10 years prior to that if you've been in the business that long. Like, it's completely different. So these folks, if they know they're going to buy a house, they are researching. You know, an average home buyer, like, they don't just Sometimes it's really great. They just decide to buy a house and they buy one really fast. But your average home buyer does take a little bit. They have plans like this time of year, especially with the summer coming up. Kids are out of school. They're like, okay, this is our time to transition. They're going to go to a new school, or empty nesters, or or people with very little kids who are moving into a certain school district. Like this is that summertime where people are making these decisions. They've known this for months already. They're researching this. They are online. If they've never bought a house before, they are looking at all the TikTok realtors and the TikTok lenders and figuring out like what's what. They're getting information and they're interpreting it in whatever way they know how to interpret it, right? Which is where we would come in. So these folks also use like a bazillion different online resources. I said TikTok, but Instagram, Facebook, Reddit threads, like all over. There's information all over the place. If they still use Google, they will Google. A lot of people are also now using Chat GPT and Claude to get information. I got my first home seller that said they found me on Chat GPT. And I'm like, what? Right? So this type of stuff is happening. They are seeking information from a bunch of different mediums, depending on the medium that they like the best, right? They already have like searched certain banks, right? Like maybe they've seen a commercial or they Google something or they ask chat, and they already sort of know what the interest rates are. So, or they think they know, right? So when you have that conversation, they're like, oh, but so-and-so bank could do it at this rate. So, and then we got to go have that conversation, right? Like they're that informed. They also have already attempted to estimate their payments, their taxes, and their insurance. So we all know at the very bottom of Zillow, there's a mortgage calculator on that. If they, like, it used to happen to me a lot with my VA buyers. The problem is, chat recommended for $1 million buyer. Ooh, I love that for you, Tracy. That's fantastic. Okay. So so Zillow has that little estimator at the bottom. I work with a lot of VA. That little estimator, last I looked at it, automatically has a 20% down payment. So if you have a buyer that like knows but doesn't know enough and they're just taking that payment for what it is, they're going to be wrong, right? Because the VA buyer is 100% financing, and those taxes and insurance are not necessarily correct, especially like me coming from Florida. Our insurance is much higher than Zillow thinks it is. So those payments are not correct. And yet this is what they think in their head. So they come to you with a certain expectation or a certain knowledge, right? Or you figure out where they have a lack of knowledge. And then they also tend to follow like trends on social media. So because they're on social media to get this information. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? We are no longer the gatekeeper of information. People used to have to come to us to get the info. That's not the case anymore. They can get the info. And while a lot of times it might be incorrect or, slightly missing portions of that information, it's, a lot of times it is correct enough, right? So our job is to interpret that information as it pertains to their particular situation. Like I said, if I have my VA buyer looking at a mortgage loan estimate with a 20% down, I got to be like, hold up. That you wouldn't have 20% down. So that's me interpreting the information that they're seeing and giving them that final piece of information that they probably couldn't put together themselves. Yeah. So there's a report, and you guys could totally Google this. It's really, really insightful. It's very lengthy, and they put it out every year. NAR puts out the 2025 NAR profile of home buyers and sellers. So it's really neat to see, because they also like, not only do they tell you today's stats, if you're like a newer agent and you weren't around a few years ago, you can see like the stat that I gave you guys earlier about the median age of a first-time home buyer. It'll tell you like that's the highest it's ever been, right? So it'll compare that stuff to you to show graphs. It's really, really interesting to look at this and kind of use that information to adjust the way that you work with customers, which is my goal for you guys today as it pertains to buyers, right? And then so this stat was from 2024. They didn't update it in 25 because I'm assuming it's exactly the same. All buyers use the internet in their home search. Every single one of them. And I remember when that number was not that. It was like a percentage, right? It wasn't all. But last year when I read this report, it said all. So what does that mean? That means you have to be on the internet as well as an agent with your profiles all over the place, right? You also have to know what they're seeing on the internet. So you got to engage with the internet. Like, what is it that my potential buyer who's going to come to me via whatever, via referral, via online lead, like my buyer, what is my buyer seeing out there? I need to know this because they all use the internet. And because they all use the internet, all of us are at risk of them clicking that Zillow button and calling a Zillow agent to show them a property. So we have to educate them, so on and so forth, which we will get into. Okay, so first-time home buyers make up only 21% of the market, which is the lowest that it's ever been since they started tracking this in 1981. Therefore, it is becoming increasingly difficult for people to become a homeowner in general, right? Which is why the median age has gotten so high. And don't quote me, I read it, like I refreshed it this morning, but I think it was something like a subsequent home buyer, right? Not the first time, any subsequent home buyer was in their 60s, like the average age, you know what I mean? Like it's getting older and older because the affordability is just not there. That's why I mentioned the student loan debt. Some people are coming right out of college and everything with this massive amount of debt and things to pay for. And, things are getting expensive. And then like they're trying to buy a house, but rent is super high. Like, we all know we know what they're going through. We see it. Some of us are going through it ourselves. And so we just have to understand that this is happening when we're speaking to our customers out there. 88% of buyers still did purchase their home through an agent, which is nice, right? 88%, that's cool. And then 76% of the first-time home buyers specifically credited their agent with helping them understand the process. So what does this mean? First-time home buyers, the majority of them, 3 out of 4 of them said it was their agent who helped them understand the process. This is what we as agents are most useful for, helping them get all this mega load of information and making it make sense, right? We don't give them the info. They already have the info. We have to get it and make it make sense for them, right? So here's a graph that came straight from that report, which I thought was really, really interesting. I'm going to look at my screen over here because it's bigger. So benefits provided by real estate agents during the home purchase process. First-time buyers, repeat buyers, and then they, put it all together. Okay. So what I want you guys to see is like that 76% is that second line, helped buyers understand the process. First-time home buyers found that extremely valuable. Repeat home buyers, it dropped a lot. So it's like, if a repeat buyer didn't find an agent that helpful with understanding the process, it is partially due to experience, but also they have a different ability now. This is what I think. They have a different ability now to interpret that information on the internet because they kind of went through it once. You know what I mean? Like it's easier for them to get it. So to me, I see that and I'm like, oh, I've now become a little less valuable as an agent, the more experience these buyers get. And that like makes me think, so how do, when I'm working with an agent, how do I make myself valuable? How do I show them my value? Right. That's what I'm looking at. And then, so, if you see, like, it's pretty consistent across the board on the top, point it out and, note it, like features and things that the buyer didn't notice. Like an agent was like, oh, that, you might not like that, or that might be broke or whatever. That is something AI and technology cannot do, right? AI cannot come to a house and tell you, oh, hey, that might be wood rot or that might be termites or that roof is old, like that kind of thing. AI can't tell us that. So, or can't tell the client that. That's another way that we become very useful in the eyes of a consumer, right? So, negotiated better contract terms. As of yet, AI cannot do that for us, right? So this is like that human interaction and vibe. So, and even still, you guys, I looked at the numbers of those things and I think, yeah, like AI can't do that. But I don't know, I kind of wanted those numbers to be a little higher. Like, in terms of like, oh, first-time home buyers found only 49% of them found that their agent was helpful in negotiating contract terms. Like, what does that say about the agent, or what does that say about like the information the client already had? Like, you know what I mean? So this is like a slide. Take a picture of it if you can, or a screenshot. Like, this is one of those that it just makes you go, Like, I look at this and I'm like, how am I going to improve my skills as an agent to continue to be valuable, to continue to be recommended by the clients I do get to other clients? Like, hey, this girl's going to help you with a bunch of things. Like, just go straight to her. Like, that's the it makes me think about. So Hope everybody got a picture. Let's go. Okay, so where are these people finding it? And I've already kind of mentioned these, but where are these buyers finding information? So Zillow, obviously, right? They're looking at the homes and the tours and, all the info they got on there. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I mean, how many people have just gone, like agents have just gone crazy with their leads on YouTube? Like, that's awesome. People are just like, I have a good friend of mine that she does new home tours all over the Central Florida area. And she's getting buyers left and right coming to her because they're on YouTube essentially hanging out, watching TV, looking at the home tours that she's doing like it's HGTV, but she's putting that content out there. They're consuming it and they're like, I like that girl. I want to work with her. Yeah. And, so they're getting the information from the internet. She's just the one providing the information so that they come to her. Yes. So, but they're also like on Reddit threads, like communicating with one another, right? Maybe not. And we're preached all that from, yes, it's important, you guys, like they're out here. Okay. Y'all are hearing me say these buyers are on the internet looking for information. What I hear is, I should be the one on the internet giving them that information, not some other Joe Schmo agent, not some random article, not their cousin or their uncle or their brother or their daddy. Like, it needs to be me giving them that information on the internet. They need to see me. I need to be emailing them info, like whatever. I need to be in touch. It needs to be, it has to come from me. That's how I remain valuable. But yeah, they are all like local Facebook groups. Oh my God, that's how I got started with the military spouse Facebook groups. Like, does anybody know a great realtor? Me, but then people get to talking. Does anybody know a great home inspector? I've never bought a house before. Like, what should I do first? Like, people get to talking. And then the responses sometimes are not realtors. Like, they're other people, right? And so they're getting info, like I said, from all over the place. You need to be the one as much as possible to be there to give them that information. Okay. So the reality is, like I've been saying, by the time they call you, but a lot of times by the time they get to an agent, they have already kind of researched and they often feel more confident in their research than they do with you. So as soon as you maybe like contradict their research, they're like, oh, is she trying to get one over on me? Is she just trying to sell me on stuff? Because remember that whole non-pressure thing. On the internet, there's no pressure. They're just receiving info and they're learning whatever they're learning, whether it's 100% correct or not. But then we have to come in here and interpret this in a gentle way so that we got to build that trust, right? Just like they trust the information they've read, you've now got to get them to trust you. Okay. So our roles, right? We used to be more like the expert in a sense. Like, we have all the info, we have the know-how, we have the process, we have the this. Not necessarily anymore. They have a lot of that info that we used to feel super cool about. Like, oh, we know, you got to come to me. I'll help you with everything. Not really. That information's all over the place now. I mean, just look at you in your own daily life outside of real estate. When you need a recommendation for something, or you need to learn about something, or something broke, like, what do? You go on the internet, or you ask ChatGPT, or I don't feel good. And you go on the internet, like you avoid, like sometimes we avoid going to the urgent care because we've asked the internet what it could be and you've made yourself feel better. These folks are taking a little longer to communicate with an agent because they're getting this information from the jump beforehand. Okay. So we are shifting from being an expert to being a guide. Yes, these are your goals. This is what you want. Like, this is the information that you have. Now I'm going to help you interpret it and help you come up with a plan and guide you to your outcome, right? You don't necessarily need me for all that info anymore. Sometimes they do, don't get me wrong. Sometimes they do. I'm talking very general here, right? But oftentimes, like, and I know you guys have seen it already, they come mad informed already. So, and then also, like, we're shifting from door opener, which I said, we never were, but that's the perception of the perception of the market is like, oh, I just need somebody to open the door. I just come open the door for me, right? Like, that has, in the last couple of years, especially with the NAR settlement, that has really shifted in our favor, I think. So we're more of a strategic advisor. So now we have and I'm just going to tell y'all from firsthand experience, like in the market that I work, using the BBAs was not like a common practice prior to the NAR settlement. It just wasn't. So we were in the eyes of the consumer, for all intents and purposes, a door opener, right? A lot of times you'd get the lead and they were just expecting you to open the door. They say, well, the other agent didn't ask me for all this, the other, whatever, you know? And so, but now I get to say, hey, so let's have like, which is what I should have done always, right? But it's like, now I get to say, hey, let's sit down and have an appointment because we need, you know, like I get to attempt to really have that appointment discussion. And I feel like that's done nothing but help me. It's forced me to do the thing I've always had to do, but I've had to bend on because there was a bunch of door openers in my market. Yeah. So we're shifting. We are a guide. We are a strategic advisor. We will have an appointment. Like we will do this process the correct way, the way it's always meant to be. And that's where our value is. So these modern buyers, they are getting data. We need to help them interpret it. So they need us to negotiate for them. Again, AI cannot do that, right? That's what they need us for. That's what a lot of times they're intimidated by. And I always thought it was funny. I'm like, I feel like I'm just like a messenger. Like, I feel like I'm just talking. I don't feel like I'm negotiating in the way that they think I'm negotiating. And yet they just really think that you're out here like fighting somebody for them, you know, and that's fine, but that's what they need us for. That's what they, in their head, that's what they need us for. Understanding local micro markets. It's going to be a little hard for them to get that specific info from the internet. And again, it's not going to necessarily apply 100% to them. Just like when chat tells you like, you know, you tell it you got a runny nose, like it could be anything from you got a cold to like you're dying, right? Like you have to interpret it. Like that's what the doctor's for, to tell you like, are you dying or do you just have a cold? That's what we're for. Like, does this apply to you? Does this not apply to you? Does this work with your goals? Does it not work with your goals? And then of course, competitive offers, right? So I'm not sure how the market is where you guys are. In some homes here, they get competitive. They get kind of competitive. Other homes, you know, they don't. But nonetheless, it is important to understand what a competitive offer looks like, and the customer is counting on us to do that. When they find the home they want to get the home they want. They don't want to lose out on it. That's what our job is, because again, as of now, AI cannot do that kind of thing for us. That's what they need us for. So the value isn't necessarily the access anymore. Like there's, what's that thing called? Open door? You can just go to the house, right? Like, so that it's not access. It's not the info. It's the context is what we're good for now. I hate saying it that way, but that's what, like their mind has shifted. They need us for a different reason than they used to need us for. Okay. So how do we like set these expectations with this buyer, right? So always start with a buyer consultation. I just mentioned that. It is extremely, extremely important, you guys. And this is something that you really got to master it. And because whenever I have a problem with a transaction, I could always pinpoint it back to my buyer consultation and how I messed up on something in my buyer consultation. Like I did a half-ass one, or I didn't do one at all, or I failed to ask certain questions or dig deeper on a certain, on their motivation or whatever. I could always pin it back to that. Always. Okay. So buyer consultation. If you don't have one already, these tools exist within EXP. Like and if you have trouble remembering, make yourself a checklist, like almost like a form to fill out that says, okay, these are the talking points that I need to make sure I go over with this customer. Another thing you can do is when you craft your actual presentation, because some of us like I used to do it. I've done everything. I've done a little bit of everything just to see what fits me. I've had like a full-blown like slideshow presentation, and that helped me stay on track because the presentation said like everything that I had to say. So it made me recall to like ask certain questions as I would get to it throughout the presentation. Same thing at a listing presentation, right? It just makes me remember. But if say that's not your vibe, you just like have phone consults or you just like to have a conversation, no problem. Have a form in the meantime. And the more you use that form, the less you will need the form. Eventually it'll just like be natural to you, like to ask all the questions or to, you heard the red flag and you're like, oh, and then you already know to dig deeper. What do I mean? For example, a random internet lead calls you, right? Like they saw you on Zillow, they called on a sign or whatever. Somebody calls and you're talking to them and they're like, oh, can we go see this house? Right. And you ask them their qualifying questions. Like, so are you working with an agent? Number one, are you working with an agent already? Have you been pre-approved? When are you looking to move? Like you ask them some of those things to kind of see what's up, but if when you're asking them, when are you looking to move? And they're like, oh, cause I have a lease. Red flag. When is your lease up? Oh, in 6 months. Oh, okay. Me showing you this house isn't really going to do anything for you right now. And then we shift into let's have a buyer consultation. Yeah. So like instead of like, oh, my lease is up in 30 days, I might consider just giving you that one freebie and meeting you at the property. You know what I mean? We honorably break leases. Oh, is that a Tennessee thing? Or like just I don't know. But you guys know, like, take this information that I'm giving you for your like specific market. Because yes, sometimes like they'll say, oh, my lease is up. I could also ask them like, are you able to break that lease? Like sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm willing to break the lease. I'm willing to pay. My landlord's willing to let me out, or my landlord's a friend. But like, you don't get that information unless you're asking the questions. You won't get that info unless you've identified the question, right? And another question you might want to ask, that happens. They call you and they're already local. Maybe they don't have a lease. Maybe they own something already. And so, yeah, okay, perfect. So, maybe they own another home. Ding, ding, ding. That is a listing opportunity right then and there if they need to sell, which is another red flag of like, can we even qualify for this house in the first place because you own another home? So you see where you can continue, like the more questions you ask, the more information you will come up with. But if you don't like know to ask that question, you're going to miss something. Because say you don't go that deep and you meet them at the house and then you find out they have a house to sell. It's not on the market. It needs some work and it's going to take forever. Like, yes, you've met the customer and that's nice, but now like they can't even buy that home. Now we've got their hopes up. Like we still need to go way back to have that buyer consultation. So why not save yourselves the time and identify that we need that buyer consultation stat, right? So when you have your form, like take some time to like create it, and any possible question, like I always ask, do they have a home to sell? Are they in a lease? Like there's a little checkbox on my form that reminds me that I need to ask those questions. Have they talked to a lender? Do they need lender recommendations? Boom, 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 boom. Like I'm checking everything. Like I ask what's a must have, what is a nice to have. I explain to them what the difference between those two things are. I make sure that their price is aligned with what they're looking for. That kind of thing. That buyer present like consultation needs to be so detailed, because later when they show you that when they want to see something that is not part of what you guys discussed, then you can be like, hey, so you said you wanted a garage and this house doesn't have a garage. So is that going to be okay? Like, where are you going to put the power tools that you said you wanted to put? And then sometimes I might be like, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. It's showing them that you're listening, but you're also not wasting anybody's time, right? Or, yeah, but we really love this house. And then you can think like, can we get a shed back there or something to solve this problem? Yeah. But again, you wouldn't know any of this unless you had a very thorough buyer consultation and asked all of those questions. So I'm harping on this because it is literally the most important thing, setting the expectation early. Because what if you're doing that and they're like, I want all these things and my budget is $250. Now all of a sudden you're going to be like, okay, hold on, time out. What your budget is and what your expectations are do not align. So this is me setting expectations from the jump at my buyer consultation. You can solve the majority of your problems right then and there. Okay. During that consultation, you want to walk them through the process. How I do it is I do not give them all the process in great detail. It's probably extremely overwhelming. If it's overwhelming for us as a new agent to learn it, and that's something that we at least know the lingo, right? Like imagine them, especially a first-time home buyer. They have no clue. So what they want, again, they have information overload already on the internet. They are looking on the internet. They don't need your info. They need your guidance. So like guide them through the gist of what the process looks like. But I always kind of just do a really like 30,000 foot view, but I guide them more specifically on what I need them to do next. Then my next conversation is what I need them to do after that. And then after that, like I'm baby stepping them the whole way. I'm holding their hand. That's what they want an agent for. If they wanted information overload, they can get that from the internet and take their chances with it. They need you to hold their hand and guide them through and make them feel like everything's okay. They want to trust you. That's the point of us, right? Because while we tend to be a little more trusting of the internet than we did like back when I was a kid, for example, it's still the internet, right? Like it's not the same. Like I think most people still understand like it's not 100% accurate. Like we always hear the stories. So having a human who's there, who knows what to do is invaluable. Like that is what they're looking for. I also want you guys to share the reality of the market in which they are trying to purchase a home. The reality. If you are in multiple offer situations still, they need to know this. You need to prepare them for it. Okay. In my market, it's not necessarily the case now. When it was, and I had my poor VA buyer come and they were like, yeah, I need help with my closing costs. We were having a different conversation. I was like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to get you these closing costs paid. That's the market reality. Now we're having a completely different conversation, right? I need help with my closing costs being paid. You know what? Probably not an issue. I could probably get you a seller to do that, right? So again, the market reality, what is it like for you? Especially if you find out this person has a lease or a house to sell or something, like do we have to get this house pending first? Probably. Like, are they going to be okay with the contingency? Maybe, maybe not. Like, that's the reality of the market. That's how we guide them to the result that they want. Okay. And then while we're doing this, I find a really great way to maintain like the trust between the two parties is tell them what their role is and what your role is. So what I mean by that, their role is to make decisions. Okay. You're not making decisions for them. Sometimes buyers feel like we're just calling the shots and like dragging them through the process and they feel like they don't have a say. Like, right? Because they feel like we're in control of the whole thing. You got to remind them like we are your guide. We are your information giver. We are your context maker. Like we make everything make sense for you. At the end of the day, you make the decisions. Give them that power. That tells them that they have to, like them feeling like they have control over the situation makes them feel so much better, you guys. So just like, I like to have this conversation, if not for nothing else, just to give them warm and fuzzies, you know, like, so you guys make the decisions. My job here is to guide you, to negotiate for you, and to do your paperwork. That's why I'm here. So if you're like, Michelle, I don't want to do this. Okay. I tell you pros, I tell you cons, your decision. And they feel warm and fuzzy about that. And I feel good about it because I'm like, you know what? They do what they want, but I've given them their information. That's really all we can do, you guys. And if we internalize that mindset, we become way less stressed as agents, right? Like just keep that in your mind. It's not up to us. It's up to them. You can, what's the saying? You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? So internalize that, and that's going to make stress-free experience for you as well as an agent. All right. So some strategies. I really like to talk about the payment, especially nowadays, because sometimes the buyer is going to come to you and they're going to be like, oh, I think my budget is $350. And then you get deeper and you're like, okay, well, what's a comfortable payment for you? And they'll tell you whatever. And then you realize that, you know, the $350 and the payment they just gave you are not the same thing. So you ask them, well, where did you get that $350 from? You know, did you talk to a lender? Like that, you know, again, questions you can ask. But usually they're a little more familiar with what they want their monthly payment to be because they know what they make at their job and they know what their bills are. And that's usually an easier question for them to answer. So if you ever ask like, what's your budget? Do you have an idea? They might not, but I usually reframe that question and I say, what's your ideal monthly payment? You know, with military members, pretty easy because they have their BH, their basic allowance for housing. So they usually want to stay with whatever that allowance is. So it's an easy question to answer. But again, I think most people can answer that question very easily. I mean, when they're looking for a rental, that's exactly what they're looking for, what their monthly payment's going to be. We just have to translate that into like the dollar amount of a mortgage payment, which is going to be different in different towns because different taxes, different, like here in Florida versus there in Tennessee, like different, right? Like my insurance can be way different than y'all's insurance. So But I break it all the way down. And I have an idea of what the interest rate is too, because I'm in great relationship with my lender. Yeah. So I already kind of have an idea. So I'm not pulling a number out of nowhere. And yet sometimes when I do that, they're like, where'd you get that number? They'll say Navy Fed is advertising blah, blah, blah interest rate. And I say, okay, but that's based on credit and income and blah, blah, blah. Have you gotten approved? No. I'm like, well, this is why it's important to get approved. Right. But anyway, I break it all the way down for them. And when we're house shopping, sometimes they'll show me stuff that say is like a little older. So the insurance is going to be higher. I'll say, remember our monthly payment. Right. And then I'll literally pull it out in a calculator and I'll send them a little screenshot of it and I'll send it to them. And I'll say, look, guys, this is that. So that's a really great way to like practical strategy of taking that information that they have from the internet and being like, this is how it very specifically applies to you. And if they have a down payment, even better. You can factor all of that in there and let them know this is what it looks like for you. You can do something similar with their closing costs as well, especially if you're partnered with a good lender. You'd be like, hey, this is the house that you like. Let me ask the lender for some numbers. Here's some numbers from the lender, like visuals, right? This is how you build the trust with them, how you get them to feel comfortable with you. Okay. Oh, and include the HOA, like all of those things that they might not even be thinking about.
Michelle, if I could
Yeah,
add one thing right there. I
sure.
mean, this is one of the areas of my career for 27 years that I started early on. And I feel like a lot of agents, they don't want to talk about payment. They don't want to do this strategy because they think their lenders does that. But what I have learned over my career is if agents will understand how to do this right here, you will differentiate yourself from any other agent because most agents won't do this. Like I said, they pawn them um, to their lenders, but which of course, we need our lenders. But the other thing that a lot of buyers they don't know also is. About the mortgage insurance. If they're not putting 20% down or doing a 90-10 or some other, unique things, they don't know how to calculate that. They don't know how to talk. They don't, they're always surprised by that. So if you're talking all this in your buyer presentation in the beginning of your first buyer meeting, you are coming to them showing that you know what you're talking about. You
Right.
know what you're talking about. And so, I just want to say I'll highly encourage you guys to take this strategy alone and make sure you're doing it if you're not. Okay.
Yeah.
So get with your lender, learn how to talk these numbers, learn how to break down what all the closing costs are so that you can estimate that. I mean, I break all that down so that, because here's the thing, if you understand how to break down all the closing costs that's going to be on the HUD, on the front end in this buyer consultation, you know how to negotiate and quote unquote manipulate the numbers better,
Mm-hmm.
right, through the transaction. So, I mean, I just
Really
can't
do.
speak highly enough about how important this piece is. So, didn't want to interrupt, but wanted to
No,
just add that piece.
no, I love that you're validating that because it's 100% true. So in the example of when I was working with my VA buyers during the crazy market, when, they had to go appraisal gaps, they had to have cash, like it was crazy, right? And so during that time, if I'm having a real conversation in a consult and they're like, look, I got no money. Like I don't have that much cash. And yet they want to buy, like they could afford it, but they don't have that appraisal gap. They don't have closing costs. And of course the seller's not going to pay it because they're going to get like 15 offers, right? So how do I help them, right? So one, by having the consultation, two, by doing all of this and asking these proper questions, but three, I already have a great relationship with my lender and I can say, you know what? If I had a buyer in this price point, more or less, right? Like I introduce them to it and I say, hey, they cannot pay for closing costs. I need a lender credit. I need a lender credit. So what does their rate look like with a lender credit of, to give them 10 grand for their closing costs, right? Then now I'm looking at the right interest rate. Now I'm strategizing. Now I can go back to the client and boy, am I going to look like a hero and say, look, this is the market reality. And also this is what we're going to need to do if you want to buy a house, just real straight up. Right. But like Kathy was saying, you got to have that great relationship with your lender. You got to educate yourself. If you educate yourself on nothing else, is this, how do you, because you lose the momentum. If you're talking to a buyer and you're like, yeah, and then you're like, oh, but we got to get with the lender. Like you've lost your momentum. Why not just pull your phone out, Google mortgage calculator, and like pop it up right there and talk to them. Pull up the MLS and show them. Boom, right there. Right? You keep your momentum and you keep them in your court that way instead of like killing the momentum and sending them over to their lender. Know the numbers. Yes, yes, yes. So, other visuals. Okay. Sometimes we got to pull out the stats and say, guys, look, the average list price to offer price in this market is in this town, in this city, in this neighborhood is this, right? Show them a visual, pull out the MLS, whatever you got to do. So this is like visuals. Okay. Also you can visual, like, when I would pull out the sheet from the lender, like because sometimes we're real tight with money and I need to be as accurate as I can. And I say, hey, lender, the one they've already talked to because I had them do that, right? Hey, we're going to close on this day. It's going to be this price, this house. Let's get insurance quotes, whatever. And my lender will give them the most accurate numbers possible with the information that we have. And I give them a visual because sometimes like they'll see the contract and they'll get confused. Well, you're only asking for this much. And I'm like, well, yes, because this box is checked and that, but a visual helps me explain the things. Yes. Rate buy downs. You can have conversations with the lender. Hey, give me a visual with a rate buy down and without a rate buy down. Boom. And then so you have to know how to interpret this though. You have to know what to ask for. You have to know how to strategize with this kind of thing. You do this type of stuff, you're like a superhero to them. That's what the internet cannot do for us right now. This is where your like regular human brain comes in and like saves the day. Okay. Appraisal gap strategy, depending on your market. Maybe that's a thing still, maybe it's not, but if you were around 6 years ago, it was definitely a thing. And so how do you strategize with those things? How do visuals, how does it look like if this happens? Even just explaining to them, what does that even mean? Like, what is even an appraisal gap? Like, what is even an appraisal? A lot of people don't even know what that is or that it even happened. Who pays for it? Like, what is the purpose? They have no clue. So you even just explaining that to them is awesome, right? And then inspection, boy, oh boy, do we have to navigate inspection sometimes? So again, they're already going to have their visual inspection report, but, gosh, say you're negotiating the inspection, like we have to talk to insurance and say, insurance, do you have a problem with any of this? Because we have to nip that in the butt right away because insurance has a problem with a lot of things here in Florida. So, but using those visuals to have those conversations with the client is extremely, extremely important. And I also want to just like a little asterisk for you guys. Do not pretend to be someone that you're not though. So I'm telling you, like, yes, learn this stuff about financing, yes, these are some, how you can navigate some of the inspection issues, but at the end of the day, you stay in your lane. Lenders stay in their lane. There's only so much you can do. Like there comes a point where you must stop and be like, you got to talk to your lender, right? Like I can't, like I always say, I can't promise you this interest rate, but per the information we have right now, this is this, hey, from experience, I can tell you that I've had other inspection reports that say this, but you need to talk to your inspector if you have an issue with something else, right? But point is, buyers love to see visuals. They often need it. So any opportunity you have where you can show them proof of that what you're saying is true, or proof of what you're trying to accomplish, or proof that you're not screwing them over, all of those things, like that's what they need to see. They need visuals. Here's an example of a visual. This is an EXP made form, but it just tells you like how it works to be a buyer, like the buyer roadmap. Like you guys can create this, brand it to yourself. It could be in your presentation, but again, it's just a visual to help guide them to say, okay, like what is my next step kinda in the process, so they're not totally lost. So again, an idea of a visual there for you. Talking about data. Okay, the more specific you are, the more that you can sound like you know what you're talking about. And all of this information is available to you in your MLS, actually. So instead of saying, well, inventory is low, like buyers and sellers alike will come to you and like, how's the market? Whatever. Like inventory is low, you would say, well, in this zip code, only 6 homes under 450 have sold in the last 30 days, and 4 of them went over asking. You knowing this information can help set the expectation for the customer on how their experience is going to go. You have to be hyper local. It's going to be a little bit difficult for them to get this kind of very specific information from the internet. And if they are getting that very specific information from the internet, then you need to see what that agent is doing, and you need to do that too because that's really great info. So you got to be like that guy or that gal that's doing that. But the goal here is to be hyper local and knowledgeable about your market and the market conditions so that you can set expectations. Super, super, super important. Content, guys, like I said, like at the beginning, they're getting information from the internet. That information should come from you as much as possible. So your sphere, continue to communicate with them, put out content that they can see, email them content that they can see, like, but practical stuff. So what does 400,000 buy in this area? What does a $400,000 house look like with a certain type of loan? Right? So like, what does a VA loan look like on a $400,000 house? That's important. Like for a VA buyer, that's very specific. So a VA buyer looking to buy in your area is going to find that video very valuable. You've seen some videos like the real cost of waiting, how to win an FHA offer, how rate buy downs actually work, temporary, permanent, this, that, and the third, how much, like very, very practical and specific information. So if you present yourself as that educator, they're more likely to reach out to you as opposed to, the little goofy videos are fine. But like, remember what a serious buyer is out here looking for serious information, and you want to be that person to give it to them. And it goes without saying, if they communicate with you, write them back. You know what I'm saying? Like be engaging in your own. So don't like just set it, post it and forget it. Like you got to be engaging with your audience, and just be constantly providing value, education, information. A serious person is going to be looking for that, not like goofy little videos, right? But also be yourself. And, it's not just about the info, right? Like they got to like you too. So find a way to do both of those things, to come out as yourself. Like this is the type of person that I am, to attract you as like, do we vibe? Do I like you? But also educate them, because that's what a serious buyer is out there looking for. Tools that you can use. Okay. So your local MLS has all of these stats, like period, right? So that's a wealth of information right there. Your CRM also has a lot of tools for communication. So like I use Bold Trail, it will send them a little market report, whether it's 100% accurate or not, it doesn't matter. They see my face at least once a month, just from that I don't even have to think about. So with EXP, obviously we get our CRM of choice, but if you didn't like any of those, you can get your own CRM. So it's free or it's paid or it's included, however you want to look at it, but it's there for you. Okay. YouTube has a wealth of information for you as well as an agent, but like that's a way that you can get in front of that person. So you could be the one providing them the info and they can come to you. There's also programs called like Fast Stats, Info Sparks. There's lots of free things. So your MLS might offer, like all MLSs are different, right? So check with your MLS. They have lots and lots of resources and you don't even have to look that far. So these are the ways that you can get that info to help you connect with your customer. Obviously, there's things like social media and things of that nature as well. So just don't take this as like, I need to do all of the things. Take it as like, okay, what are my goals and what is the most effective way that I'm going to be able to hit my goals and do that. Like, I'm not saying go on Facebook, go on TikTok, go on Instagram, and also go on YouTube. I'm not saying to do any of that. I'm saying, what is the way that you are going to hit your goal most effectively? And what is the thing that you'll actually enjoy doing to get there? And then do that one thing, whatever that one thing is, be the master of that. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So that's all I got for you guys. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. But in the meantime, I'll just leave this here if you guys want to connect with me outside of here. I love to chat. I'm always on social media chatting with people. So, but yeah, I'm here for a couple of minutes. I do have to run to a class right after this. So I got like a couple of questions if anybody, wants to ask anything.
Anybody have any questions? This great stuff. Thank you, Michelle.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much.
I love buyers, you guys. If it wasn't obvious, I love working with buyers. That's how I started.
So good. Would you be open to sharing your buyer checklist with us that you go through?
Yes, I can. I can text it to you.
And that'd be fantastic. And then we'll add it. We post this so I can send you a recording if you'd like it. Once we edit, we put a thumbnail to it for YouTube. We got a whole YouTube channel for the Freedom Team. So yeah. Anybody have any final questions?
Yes, Madam Kathy.
Yeah, Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that what you're calling a buyer checklist, is that the same as buyer consultation form?
The consultation is the meeting. The checklist is kind of what you go through to make sure you cover all the things you're wanting to cover.
Okay. Is there any way that I can convince you to email me both?
Yeah, we're going to put that with this recording. So we'll have that linked in the comments with this recording when we put it up on the Freedom Team site and YouTube channel. Okay.
Okay. I have an appointment today, this evening, so I'd like to go and try it out on the.
Yeah. Well, when she texted to me, I can text it to you. Text me. I'm gonna put my phone number in here, and then text me as soon as we're done, and then as soon as I get it, I'll forward it to you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I just put my phone number in there. Shoot me a text. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else before we had to let her go?
If you guys think of anything later, again, feel free to reach out to me on any of those platforms. I'm super happy to chat and help out however I can. And yes, I'll provide that consultation checklist for you guys.
Zena, if you're asking about Zena, if you're asking about the YouTube, it's the Freedom Team on YouTube. So you got to look for Freedom Team EXP Realty, and then you should be able to find us, and then subscribe and like that too. You know, one quick thing that I'll just add, talking about the whole like with buyers and negotiating. You know, if you have a buyer that needs closing cost and you can't come to your buyer needs it and the seller won't pay any for some reason, a question to ask your lender is, our buyer needs the closing cost, as you know, Mr. Lender. The seller refuses to pay their closing cost. What options do you have for our buyer, Mr. Lender? Because there are a lot of different ways that your lender can help in that situation too. So that's a good question to ask your lender.
I have a quick question,
Yeah,
Michelle.
go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, Michelle, when you are estimating the closing costs for them, do you put a percentage point there or like
Yeah,
how do you
lately it's
estimate?
been okay to just put a percentage just because it's a little easier to get the seller to pay for it nowadays. But
What
when I have to,
percentage do you usually estimate? 3% or
I usually put 3,
3?
but
Yeah.
that's my market. It
Mm-hmm.
might not be as much in other markets, but I put 3 and it tends to pretty much cover everything. But like in Florida, it just depends on your contract. It depends on your market. So I would get a little bit more specific with your specific contract. But in a market when I had to be a little bit more specific because I didn't want to ask for too much because the market was a little more competitive. Then I would get a dollar amount. I would try to get really, really close to a dollar amount if I could. But it usually ends up for me being somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. It just depends. Like if it's an older house, it's going to be more because insurance is higher. If it's a newer house, less,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
No problem.
Good stuff. Well, Michelle, I know you need to run. And guys, tomorrow we have our Connect to Collaborate. Come tomorrow, same time, same link. Bye, Michelle. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Of
Yes,
course.
so good. So good. So tomorrow we have our Connect to Collaborate. Come, we can brainstorm all of this, talk, in details about some different strategies, things like that. So just come 10 o'clock, 10 Central Time. So same time, same link tomorrow. Okay. Good having you guys. And this was good stuff. Really good stuff that she kind of broke down.
Mhm.
So it'd be good to, be able to just go through some of the things and mastermind on it tomorrow, or anything else that you guys want to talk about. So, all right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow, same
Thanks,
time.
Kat.
All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Danny.
Bye-bye.
Oh, 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 hey. Out here on the grind, chasing dreams.